Okay, so making my paper sculpture, getting started. I took a piece of cardboard, I cut it small because I really wanted to fill the space of it. Then I chose a piece of paper that I'm gonna sort of just wrap my cardboard like a present. This way you don't see the original cardboard, but you could totally leave it, especially if you like the look of the cardboard. You can also paint it, that would be a fun option. So I'm just kind of wrapping it like you would wrap a present. Don't go crazy here, you can get a little messy with this part if you wanted to, because the whole thing is just gonna be kooky crazy looking at the end. So now that I have a little base for this, I chose some pieces of paper that are all kind of different colors. But again, if you're working with just plain white, then you might want to color them all a little different. This way you could see the different shapes that you create and the different textures through the paper. So again, everything's pretty small. I mean, look at the size of my box. So I'm not gonna really need a piece of paper this big. That's just gonna cover it, right? So we can always start with smaller bits first and see where that takes us. So first, I'm just gonna go over a variety of different techniques that you can use. You can mix and match these to get all different interesting things happening in your artwork. So I'm just gonna give myself a few different sizes. This way we can kind of experiment with what we want to do. So small, medium, big, and large. So some things that you can do. I have some funky scissors. I know that when we use these in the classroom, sometimes my awesome artists will say, oh, I have those at home, I use those. Awesome, bust them out. Bust out whatever you have. But if you don't have them, you can use regular scissors as well to create some interesting cuts just by sort of wiggling it as you cut. So that can kind of give you a cool wobbled shape. You can also cut little triangles into it. So one way to get started with some interest on your sculpture is to get some interesting looking papers. Now you might be saying, okay, well, Mrs. Barbara, how do we get that to stay? That's a little strange because you can't really add glue on here. It's too skinny. So how can we get this to stay? What is it that we can do to this? We're gonna give it a little fold. Yes, I know you knew that because you're super duper smart. So we're just gonna give it a little fold. Not too much, because then you're gonna take away from that awesome top that you just made, which go ahead, add more if you want to. That's the fun part about this. You could do as much or as little as you want. I'm gonna take my liquid glue and let's talk about gluing techniques. I know we're not in the classroom to review these right now, but it's never a bad time to talk about this. So look at this teeny tiny space here. Some of you might be thinking we need at least half of this bottle to get that to stay. I mean, there's no way you can get it to stay with at least half the bottle of glue, maybe 3/4 of glue. Yeah, some of you might be thinking that, but guess what? We just need a few dots. So I'm gonna do, of course, if your glue doesn't work, sometimes it gets clogged, so close it. Pop off that dirt, open it back up, and then just a few dots will do. Maybe a few on the front and a few on the end, super duper small. Another thing I like to do, just spread it like this. It's glue. You know, you're gonna wipe it off your hands eventually. Plus we're artists, don't worry about getting your hands dirty. So what I'm doing is I'm just gonna seal just that tab part, right? I'm not gonna fold down that big part. I wanna leave that up. Oops, it fell off. Why? Because we need to hold it, boys and girls. Remember, if you stare at it, it's not gonna work. It needs your help. Help it out, give it a little crease, hold it, whatever you gotta do, and guess what? The longer we hold it, the better it's gonna stay. So why is this called a sculpture? Well, because anytime something is viewed in the round in different directions, it's 3D. So for example, this tape dispenser, we can look at it this way, we can look at it this way, we can look at it this way, we can look at it this way. We can look at it in all different directions. Yes, that's my mom's name, Jackie. But when we look at a piece of paper, for example, something that's flat, something that is not 3D, you really can only look at it one way, right? There's just like the front of it, right? Especially think about this hanging on the wall. We're really just looking at the front of it because it's flat. So when we talk about something 3D, now we're looking at it this way, but we can also look at it this way. We can also look at it this way, and there's things that are elevated and in view. So it's the difference between something that's 2D and 3D, something that is in the round versus something that is flat. So we just saw our basic technique here, folding, making a little tab and gluing it down. Another technique I really like is the coiling technique, which, my goodness, we could go crazy with and create some really interesting projects. Maybe that will be next week or tomorrow. We'll see how this goes. So you can take your piece of paper and a pen, maybe a pencil, anything round that you have. The larger the pen or the round object you're using, the larger the coil. And the smaller or skinnier the pencil, the skinnier the coil. So keep that in mind if you want different sizes. So I went ahead and rolled it, and then I'm just gonna kind of release it a little bit. I'm still kind of giving it a little pinch, but when I release it, now it has a bend and a roll to it. So that's pretty cool. You can even help it out and re-roll it and kind of, you know, help it out a little bit to get it in more of a round shape, which could be a full circle. Or again, if you take smaller pieces and smaller things, then you can certainly get skinnier and smaller coils. So experiment with that, see how that goes for you. I can't wait to see the different things you guys make with these techniques. So again, just kind of rolling and holding. I like that. Rolling and holding. What are you doing today? Just rolling and holding. And then when you let go, and look at that, you can even rest them inside of each other for a really cool effect that way. So just so many different things that you can do. Let's go over a few more. Oh gosh, I'm already thinking of so many different techniques in my mind. I wonder how much time we have. So I'm just gonna start to cut little strips in this one. Sometimes I have a few second graders in my mind that will say, oh, this looks like a car wash when your car goes through the car wash. Right, I believe that was Jaden that said that. And he's right, look, your car or your head's gonna go right through that. And that's a really cool thing to either just leave the way it is, right? I kind of like that look. You can kind of scrunch them like that and get them really interesting. You can be particular about it and fold them very neatly and have one go to the left, then one to the right. Now, again, imagine size here. Imagine a bigger piece of paper, imagine a smaller piece of paper. Imagine how many cuts you do, right? I did about 8 cuts here, so I got this many pieces, but if you did 2 big cuts, then you'd have one on one side, one on the other. It's gonna be a cool looking tree. Think about the different ways you can glue it, right? You could glue it with the strips facing down. You can also do the technique we learned before where you make a tab. Fold and hold, right? So we're starting to get some really interesting things here, which I'm really excited about. So as I continue to just make different things, I'll explain what I'm doing. I'm kind of also gonna get creative with it and just experiment as I go along the way. I also found hole punchers, so you can kind of decorate these papers with different interesting things on them already, so that when you attach them, they're even more interesting looking. So let's give this a try. Let's get creative. I can't wait to see the things that you make. Don't forget, if you don't have all this fancy paper here, you can use printer paper. You can even scribble on it with some pencil and give it some cool black and white stripes, and then get started with the same techniques. All right, so let's get to work. Let's see what you make. Have fun.